Hello and welcome back to the farm. As promised, this is a look back. It seems amazing that it's been a year since I first discovered this property for sale. Property that I used to play on as a child, property that I always had an interest in. I found the property in the fall of 2021. I closed on the property roughly in January 2022, and since that point I've been making videos chronicling my journey on this property to try and rehabilitate this old rundown farm into a state that it could be reused both for recreation as well as some agriculture. From the beginning, I realized that there were things that I needed to do on this property that I both didn't really have the skill for and definitely didn't have the equipment for. As the winter turned into spring, I realized I had to make some purchases. It started with a chainsaw, then a weed whacker, then a riding lawnmower, and eventually I upped the game a little bit to a bulldozer. Looking back, I realized that some of my early efforts were rather futile. Pushing over saplings, weed whacking a field, stuff that really didn't make a difference, but it was a process. It was a process for me to learn what some of this equipment could do, and more importantly, what it couldn't do, and to formulate a plan for how best to move forward. Some of my efforts were successful, such as cutting down some of the trees and getting a lawnmower, clearing some of the grass in the front area of the property. But some of my efforts were not successful. For example, again, the lawnmower. I had grand plans that this was going to be able to clear a large portion of this property, and that just wasn't the case. As I used this lawnmower on the road frontage, I quickly realized that it was both underpowered for what I really needed it to do, but quite simply, it was the wrong tool for the job. Yes, it was fine for mowing the lawn, but it was the wrong tool for the larger tasks of land clearing, which needed to be done all over this property. My lack of experience in all things rural has shown through all of these videos. This has been an uphill learning process. I didn't grow up in the country. I grew up in the city. I never had farm tools. I had lawnmowers and stuff that you would use in a city. I've always had an interest in heavy equipment, but never had any real need to buy it until I purchased this property. So one of the main disconnects that I experienced in owning this property was the thought process that I needed to buy as big a piece of equipment as I could with the amount of money that I had. And if you've been following along with the videos, you've seen that thought process come to life in my purchase of a gigantic D6 bulldozer. My intent for buying the bulldozer was to clear the living layer off of the field, to strip it of weeds, of bushes, shrubs, and to try and get down to a blank canvas, bare dirt, where I can build up from with some upcoming projects. Now, what I should have done is start looking for pieces of equipment that were sized to the task that I needed to perform. Now, if you look at this field, it's completely overgrown, and somebody with no rural experience would obviously think it needs to be completely stripped. Now, as I have read in the comments that all of you have so graciously provided for me, and thank you for providing the comments, what I actually did is probably strip the topsoil off of this gigantic field. Many of you commented that the tool that I actually needed for this job was something called a root rake. Now, root rakes come in a variety of sizes and configurations, including root rakes that can be attached onto bulldozers, such as the one that I bought. However, until somebody left a comment about it, I didn't know that a root rake was a thing. Again, I have no experience with this type of equipment. Root rakes also come on things like tractors, and they're even their own freestanding piece of equipment. You could buy a root rake that has wheels or tracks. Now, in exploring root rakes for the bulldozer that I purchased, they're very expensive. Or you could custom fabricate one yourself, or hire it out. But again, it's very expensive. So here's the thing. This is a hobby property for me. This is not going to earn me a living. It's not going to be a location for my livelihood. Therefore, I am not going to sink my life savings into this property. I have some money that I could sink into pieces of equipment as the needs arise, but my main source for sourcing this equipment is either Facebook Marketplace or Craigslist. And in my area, there's just not a lot of equipment out there for sale. Things like bobcats, tractors, heavy equipment, it's available, but a lot of it's very expensive, and by that I mean it's more expensive than what it should be based on what research I'm able to do online, or it's quite far away from me. And once again, I don't have lots of equipment to transport heavy equipment. I don't have trucks and tractors and semis and trailers. I need to either find stuff that people can deliver for me or things that are reasonably sized that I can use my local resources to facilitate transport for. It just so happens that this bulldozer was both large and within a budget, and the seller was willing to transport it for me. And that's one of the reasons why I ended up getting this bulldozer. Now, once I'm done with this bulldozer, hopefully in the fall of this year, I am planning to put it up for sale. And that brings us to the topic of equipment for next year. Once I have my property stripped, or this front field that I plan on using for some light agricultural purposes, I realize that I need to get a tractor. So a tractor is one piece of equipment, but implements for the tractor are also lumped into that bucket. I realize that I'm going to probably want a front end loader on the tractor when I purchase it. I also realize that I'm going to need a brush hog or a finish mower, a tiller to deal with all of this dirt that's around here, possibly a root rake, possibly a back blade, and other implements as I realize that I need them. And that's also where I rely on comments from you to help me identify things that I may need that I don't know that I need. You guys have a lot more experience in this than I do, and I appreciate the comments. Now, another thing that I have to do is deal with this side road on my property. The side road goes from the street out to a 4-acre clearing or a 5-acre clearing. As you see, I put down a piece of 2x6, which was the only thing so far that has been able to get me from the front side of the property to the back side of my property. I have not been on the back of my property all summer long, both because I was busy, but also because there's really no easy way to get me there. I know I'm going to have to build some sort of bridge for this. I can't put in concrete, I can't put in culverts, I can't put in pipes, I can't do anything structural because this area is a wetland and the DEC already told me that I couldn't put that kind of stuff in. I have been able to clear most of the road. The first half I was able to clear with the bulldozer. The second half I've been able to clear with my weed whacker. I did change the head. I bought a plastic blade head, and that was a great piece of equipment. It was able to cut through a lot of the weeds, a lot of the brush, and it was able to help me clear the entire second half. But clearing it with a weed whacker is a lot different than bulldozing it, getting it down to dirt, and prepping it for things like crushed stone. Another area of my property that I haven't really visited this year is the pond and the marsh. Again, there's a path that has been overgrown, and up until a couple weeks ago, I really haven't had access to it. But it is back in this area that next year I would like to put a couple beehives. There will be a couple videos on that coming up, probably over the winter. Now, as I walk back to the property and I look around at all the progress that's been made this summer, it is amazing to me. Not 3-4 months ago, this was all 5 or 6 foot tall pricker bushes, acres and acres of pricker bushes. I've been able to clear this. Now, maybe it's not cleared well, and maybe there's a lot of debris all around, and I still have to take care of that. But it's manageable at this point. I can walk the property. I can see the line where the road meets the neighbor's property, where it meets my property, where my buildings are. I can walk around my buildings now, and I could formulate a plan for what I need to do next on this property. That's 100% further ahead than I was in March or April of this year. Now, there are areas where I have to backfill, such as here by the road. As I've said all along, there's probably a 3-foot drop off. I need to push some of that dirt back up against this area and hopefully grade it into a manageable ramp. While I was in this area, I made some incredible discoveries. There were 2 silos in this area, and they had a rubble foundation. There was a smaller silo and a much larger silo, and for the time being, I'm going to leave these alone. This is going to be part of a much larger project as I get into clearing the area in and around these buildings. But up until a few weeks ago, I didn't even know this stuff was here. I was never able to get to this area. So this, to me, is exciting. It means progress. Thanks to the bulldozer and a lot of my clearing efforts, I've been able to access these buildings. Remember, this was all overgrown. I was never able to get into this area except during the winter when all of the vegetation was dead. Now that I'm able to access some of these areas a little more easily, I'm able to more closely inspect them and access them. And while the situation has not improved at all, and while the foundation and other areas of these buildings continue to deteriorate, at least I'm able to access them and once again formulate some sort of a plan for how best to move forward. It is my plan to try and preserve these buildings and, where possible, to rebuild the structures. The garage is one case where I would like to rebuild it or reskin it as rapidly as possible. The side building next to it, which we call the shop, is also another building that I would like to try and preserve, reskin it, brace it, and make it workable in the near term. Now, in doing some of the clearing of this area, I was able to once again identify foundation issues on this building that's called the shop or the store. Some of the foundation of this building is also deteriorating. The front area of this building is not much better. There are some more trees that do have to come down. My buddy Steve said he will come back out in the fall once the canopy clears out a little bit, and when felling these trees becomes a little bit more safe and more manageable. I do plan on removing all the remainder of the trees in front of this building, the shop, and the big building, the barn. I do have to remove some more roots. I do have to clear some of the trees that are in the field. There are more trees that have to come down that will be pushed over into the field. So clearing the field of trees and branches and all that stuff is not an immediate priority because across the property there are more trees that still have to come down. Again, hopefully that's going to be a job for this coming fall. One of my main goals for this summer was to cut in an area to be used as a driveway. Before I had the bulldozer, I was not able to cut in a path, like you see here, that goes along the buildings, eventually around behind the barns. Before I had the driveway cut in, I was parking along the road, which was really dangerous. So overall, this summer, I was able to achieve a lot of the goals that I had set out this spring. And while no, I'm not done with anything by any means, and while there's still a lot more work to be done this fall, I am very happy with the progress that has been made thus far in one season. I'd like to personally thank everybody for your participation in this channel, for watching the videos, liking, sharing, subscribing, and I'd like to thank you all for your comments. One of the main reasons why I built this channel was to try and create a community for people who are interested in projects like this, and to also grow my knowledge of how best to proceed with my own property. I hope you'll continue to watch these videos and to support this channel. And with that, the work continues. We'll see you on the next video.